I'm Abigail Hayes, 36 years old, and until last Friday, I was the chief architect behind a $3.4 billion government security system. For 8 years, I poured my soul into Tech Dynamics, becoming the sole signatory on their biggest contract ever. They thought they could discard me with a handshake and a security escort. What they forgot was my name alone controlled everything. I watched their smug expressions morph into terror as their multi-billion-dollar empire began crumbling around them. Before I tell you how I brought a massive corporation to its knees, tell me where you're watching from and hit that subscribe button to join me on this wild ride to justice. My journey to becoming the most valuable employee at Tech Dynamics started at MIT, where I graduated with honors in computer science, specializing in security systems. Even as a student, I had a knack for identifying vulnerabilities others missed. My professors called it an intuitive understanding of how systems could be compromised. I called it common sense. After graduation, while my classmates headed to Silicon Valley startups or Wall Street firms, I was drawn to the challenge of government infrastructure security. When Tech Dynamics offered me a junior developer position, I jumped at the opportunity. Back then, in 2015, the company was still mid-sized but growing rapidly, with a reputation for innovation in security infrastructure. Tech Dynamics occupied a modest office building in Northern Virginia, close enough to Washington, D.C. to host government officials but far enough away to avoid the capital's exorbitant real estate prices. On my first day, I remember the excitement I felt walking into their modern glass building, badge clipped proudly to my blazer. The company culture then was collaborative and merit-based. We worked hard but celebrated victories together. Everyone felt part of something important. Marcus Bennett was already CEO when I joined. In his early 50s, he had a commanding presence and a strategic mind that had grown the company from a small contractor to a recognized name in government security. In those early years, he knew every employee by name and would often stop by the development floor to check on projects. He seemed genuinely passionate about creating cutting-edge security solutions. Stephanie Carter, the coup, became my first mentor at Tech Dynamics. At 42, she was one of the few women in leadership, and I admired her business acumen. She took me under her wing, inviting me to meetings above my pay grade and advocating for my ideas. "You have a unique perspective, Abigail," she would say. "Don't ever lose that." I didn't realize then how quickly mentorship could turn to rivalry. Ryan Wilson joined as CTO about a year after me. He came from a major tech company with impressive credentials and an even more impressive ego. At 38, he had a talent for presenting technical concepts to non-technical clients. But his actual coding skills were mediocre at best. Still, he charmed the executives and quickly became the face of our technical team, despite rarely understanding the depths of what we were building. James Harrison, the CFO, kept to himself mostly, a numbers man through and through. He viewed employees as assets with varying returns on investment. In meetings, he referred to team members as resources and seemed perpetually concerned with efficiency metrics. His cost-cutting suggestions started subtly but grew more aggressive each quarter. The only person who remained truly loyal was Diana Mitchell from the legal department. Just a few years older than me at 34, she had an uncanny ability to translate complex legal jargon into practical advice. We bonded over a late-night pizza during contract deadlines and became friends outside of work. She was the one person I could trust without reservation. My rise through the ranks came quickly. Within 2 years, I'd moved from junior developer to team lead, then to security architect. I had an ability to anticipate security threats before they emerged, designing countermeasures that impressed even our most skeptical government clients. My systems consistently outperformed expectations in penetration testing, earning Tech Dynamics a reputation for unparalleled security solutions. The big break came in my 5th year when the Department of Homeland Security announced a massive overhaul of their critical infrastructure protection systems. The contract, valued at $3.4 billion over 10 years, would be the largest in Tech Dynamics history. Marcus assembled an elite team to develop the proposal, with me as the technical lead. For 6 months, we worked nearly around the clock, developing specifications, security protocols, and implementation strategies. I designed a comprehensive system called Guardian, Government Unified Architecture for Resilient Defense Infrastructure, and network, incorporating cutting-edge encryption, adaptive threat response, and seamless integration across multiple agencies. The proposal was revolutionary in scope. When the Government Selection Committee requested in-person presentations, I delivered the technical portion. The committee, composed of high-ranking officials and security experts, peppered me with questions for nearly 3 hours. I answered, each one confidently, even suggesting improvements to their own security requirements. Later, the committee chair told Marcus my presentation had been the deciding factor. The contract was awarded to Tech Dynamics, but with an unusual stipulation. Due to the critical nature of the infrastructure being protected, the government required the principal system architect to be named explicitly in the contract, not the company, but the individual responsible. That person would need to maintain direct oversight throughout implementation and maintenance phases. That person was me. My name, Abigail Hayes, appeared as the sole signatory alongside the government representatives. At the time, it seemed like a tremendous honor and responsibility. Marcus assured me it was merely a formality. The company stands behind you, he said during the celebration party, arm around my shoulders as photographers captured the moment. This is a team victory. If only I had paid more attention to the fine print Diana tried to highlight. If only I had noticed how Stephanie's congratulatory hug felt slightly stiff, or how Ryan's toast seemed forced. If only I had seen James calculating my new value to the company with dollar signs in his eyes. As we moved into implementation, subtle changes began occurring in the company culture. With the massive contract secured, Tech Dynamics expanded rapidly. New management layers appeared. Quarterly reviews became increasingly focused on profit margins rather than innovation. The collaborative atmosphere faded as departments competed for resources and recognition. I was too busy leading the Guardian implementation to notice the shifting ground beneath me. Too dedicated to the project to see the jealousy and ambition growing around me. Too trusting of the company I had helped build to imagine they would ever see me as disposable. But as I would soon discover, my position as the named architect on a $3.4 billion contract made me both invaluable and a threat. And Tech Dynamics had begun making plans to resolve that contradiction. The first sign that something was wrong came about 6 months into the Guardian implementation. I arrived at the office on a Tuesday morning to discover a high-level meeting about the project was underway without me. Through the glass walls of the conference room, I could see Marcus, Stephanie, Ryan, and several government liaisons reviewing what appeared to be my latest system architecture diagrams. When I knocked and entered, the conversation halted abruptly. Abigail, Stephanie said with a tight smile, we didn't want to bother you with administrative details. You're too valuable writing code. Administrative details? I had designed this system from the ground up. There were no details I shouldn't be involved in. Still, I nodded professionally and took a seat, noting how Ryan quickly flipped over a document as I sat down. Later that week, I requested access to the meeting minutes and received a heavily redacted version, with key decision points obscured. When I questioned this, Stephanie explained it away as standard procedure for compartmentalized information. But I had top security clearance for the entire project. There should have been no compartmentalization from me. The exclusion continued. Weekly update meetings were rescheduled without notifying me. My team members began receiving instructions that contradicted my directives. Stephanie, once my mentor, now regularly undermined my authority in meetings, questioning my timelines and resource allocations in front of clients. Abigail's estimates are always so conservative, she would say with a laugh. We can definitely accelerate this phase. She had no technical background to make such assessments, but her position as coup gave her words weight. Ryan's betrayal was more direct. As CTO, he began requesting administrative access to my secure code repositories for backup purposes, he claimed. But Guardian already had the most robust backup systems possible, with triple redundancy and government-approved security protocols. When I denied his request, citing security requirements specified in the contract, he went over my head to Marcus. "We can't have single points of failure," Marcus told me in his office. "Ryan needs to be able to step in if anything happens to you." "If something happens to me?" I questioned. "If you're sick or unavailable," he clarified quickly. "This is too important to rest on one person's shoulders." I reluctantly created a limited access account for Ryan, but implemented silent alerts that would notify me of any access attempts. The alerts began triggering almost nightly as Ryan attempted to access core system components well beyond his approved areas. Meanwhile, my team was being systematically dismantled. Jessica, my brilliant encryption specialist, was reassigned to a commercial project. Tyler, who had developed our threat monitoring algorithms, was moved to sales support. When I protested these moves to Stephanie, she simply said, "We need to distribute talent across the company. You can't hoard all the best people." By month 8 of implementation, I had lost half my original team, replaced by new hires who lacked the institutional knowledge and specialized skills the project required. Training them slowed our progress considerably. Yet, in management meetings, I was increasingly pressured to explain the delays. During one particularly tense executive meeting, I finally confronted the issue directly. "The constant personnel changes and interference with my team are jeopardizing our delivery schedule," I stated firmly. As the contract signatory, I'm formally requesting that my original team be restored and that all Guardian decisions route through me as legally required. Marcus dismissed my concerns with a wave. "We appreciate your dedication, Abigail, but Tech Dynamics must maintain operational flexibility. The contract is with our company, not with you personally." "Actually," I corrected him, "my name is explicitly listed as the responsible architect. The government selected our proposal largely based on my specific expertise and oversight." The room grew uncomfortably quiet. James Harrison broke the silence. "Perhaps we should have legal review the exact terms again." Later that afternoon, passing by the small kitchen on the executive floor, I overheard Marcus speaking with Stephanie and James. They hadn't noticed me approaching. "The system is nearly complete," Marcus was saying. "We have the documentation and code base. Do we really need to keep carrying her salary at that level?" "The contract specifies her role clearly," James replied. "But there are ways to transition knowledge more cost-effectively." "Ryan says he's mapped most of the system architecture already," Stephanie added. "We could bring in junior developers at a third of the cost to maintain it once it's live." I froze, coffee mug in hand, as the reality of their betrayal crystallized. They were planning to replace me as soon as Guardian was operational.
I backed
away silently, heart pounding, and returned to my office. The next day, I received a calendar invitation for a meeting with Diana from legal. When I arrived at her office, she closed the door behind me, looking uncomfortable. "They asked me to prepare these for you to sign," she said quietly, sliding a folder across her desk. Inside were modified contract papers that would effectively dilute my role as the principal architect, adding Ryan as a co-architect with equal authority. "They're presenting it as a promotion for you," Diana explained. "Not meeting my eyes?" "Executive Technical Director, with broader responsibilities but less direct oversight of Guardian. And if I don't sign?" I asked. Diana hesitated. "I shouldn't be telling you this, but they're building a case for performance issues, documenting the delays, even though they caused them by reassigning your team." I thought carefully before responding. "Thank you for the warning. I'll need to review these documents thoroughly before making any decisions." That night, I didn't go home. Instead, I stayed at my office, reviewing every line of the contract, every email, every meeting note from the past 3 years. I pulled up the official contract filed with the government, confirming what I already knew. Any significant changes to the system or its oversight required written approval from both the government contracting officer and me personally. If Tech Dynamics wanted to edge me out, they would need to either convince me to sign away my authority or find a way to terminate me that wouldn't violate the contract. Either way, I needed to protect myself and the system I had created. I began meticulously documenting everything: the team reassignments, the excluded meetings, Ryan's unauthorized access attempts, the modified contract papers. I encrypted this documentation and stored copies in multiple secure locations outside the company network. Next, I reviewed the Guardian architecture. As its creator, I knew every module, every security layer, every potential vulnerability. The system was designed to be resilient against external threats, but I had never considered the need to protect it from internal ones. That needed to change. Over the next few weeks, I initiated my contingency plan while maintaining a facade of cooperation. I expressed interest in the promotion but requested time to transition my current responsibilities properly. This bought me valuable weeks to prepare. During this time, I created a hidden administrative access protocol, buried deep in the system's security architecture. It wasn't a backdoor. Exactly, nothing that would compromise system security, but rather an authentication fail-safe that only I could activate. If removed from the project improperly, I could ensure that Guardian would recognize the breach of contract and require proper authentication, my authentication, to continue normal operations. I also began documenting the company's questionable practices, the security shortcuts they had implemented against my recommendations, the misleading progress reports to government officials, the reallocation of contract funds to other company projects. All the while, I continued delivering exceptional work, hitting milestones despite the obstacles placed in my way. I would not give them legitimate cause to question my performance. "You seem different lately," Diana observed over lunch one day. "More determined," I smiled. "Let's just say I'm being more strategic about my career." What I didn't tell her was that I was preparing for a war I hadn't started but was determined to finish. As my contingency plans took shape, the hostility from management intensified. 3 months before Guardian's scheduled completion, I arrived at work to find my belongings had been moved overnight. My spacious office near the development team had been reassigned to Ryan, while I was relocated to a windowless room, half the size, tucked away in a far corner of the building. "Space optimization," Stephanie explained with faux sympathy when I confronted her. "With the new government contract teams expanding, we need to rethink our floor plan." The message was clear. Despite being the architect of their largest contract, I was being systematically diminished. The physical isolation was just the beginning. The following week, I discovered my system access had been restricted. Attempting to review security protocols for a subsystem, I received an access denied message. A call to IT confirmed that Ryan had authorized a security compartmentalization initiative, limiting my visibility to only components I was actively coding. "But I need comprehensive access to ensure system integrity," I argued to the help desk technician, who could only apologize and direct me to management. Ryan avoided my calls all day. When I finally cornered him in the break room, his explanation was deliberately condescending. "Abigail, with a system this complex, we need to implement proper access controls. Surely you understand the principle of least privilege?" he smirked. "Just submit a request form whenever you need additional access. I'll personally review each one." The request forms became another weapon. My legitimate access needs were delayed, questioned, or denied outright, requiring extensive justification while creating significant obstacles to my work. Tasks that once took hours now required days as I navigated this bureaucratic maze. Meanwhile, the deadlines remained unchanged. In fact, they became more aggressive. Project milestones were arbitrarily accelerated, often with less than half the necessary time allocated. When I objected based on established development standards, James would intervene. "The financial models require accelerated delivery," he would insist, waving a spreadsheet. "Every week we exceed is costing Tech Dynamics significant carrying costs." The impossible deadlines served a dual purpose. They set me up for failure while justifying the increasing scrutiny of my work. Weekly review meetings became interrogations, with Ryan and Stephanie tag teaming to highlight any deviation from their unreasonable expectations. The situation came to a head during a major client presentation to Department of Homeland Security officials. As the system architect, I had prepared comprehensive documentation and demonstrations of Guardian's capabilities. The morning of the presentation, however, Marcus intercepted me in the lobby. "Change of plans," he said smoothly. Ryan will handle the technical presentation today. But the officials specifically requested that I walk them through the architecture, I protested. I'm the one named in the contract. You'll still be introduced, Marcus assured me. But Ryan has a better relationship with Director Peterson. It's just politics, Abigail. I was given a seat at the far end of the conference table, away from the government officials. Ryan presented my work as his own, stumbling through technical questions and making several concerning misrepresentations of the system's capabilities. When Director Peterson specifically asked for my input on a security protocol, Ryan quickly intercepted. What Abigail means to say is ... double quotes, he began before I had even opened my mouth. I watched in silent fury as my life's work was mangled and misrepresented by someone who barely understood its fundamentals. After the meeting, I requested a private conversation with Marcus. This has gone too far, I told him in his office. Ryan made technical commitments today that Guardian cannot fulfill as designed. He promised zero-delay emergency protocols that would require bypassing critical security verifications. Marcus leaned back in his leather chair. Then you'll need to modify the design. Those modifications would compromise system security. They violate both best practices and our contractual obligations. Find a way to make it work, he replied dismissively. Ryan has assured me it's possible, and the client was impressed by the capabilities. That evening, I discovered why Ryan had been so confident. Checking the activity logs, I found evidence that he had been attempting to reverse engineer my security protocols, working with a small team of developers in secret. They had created a parallel development track, trying to replicate Guardian's core functions without my specialized security measures. Their attempts were concerning, not just as a betrayal but as a fundamental threat to the system's integrity. The shortcuts they were implementing would create significant vulnerabilities, potentially exposing critical national infrastructure to attack. While I was processing this discovery, Diana called me, her voice tight with urgency. Are you still at the office? You need to see something. 20 minutes later, we met at a coffee shop 3 blocks from Tech Dynamics. Diana slid a folder across the table. This was misfiled in the contract review system, she explained. It's an internal memo from Stephanie to the executive team regarding your position. The document outlined a calculated strategy to sideline me. It detailed how Stephanie had been building a performance case against me, documenting the missed deadlines they had engineered and attributing technical problems to my obsessive security measures, rather than Ryan's incompetent modifications. Most disturbing was the timeline. They planned to remove me from the project immediately after the final phase of development, just before implementation. Ryan would be positioned to take over, with the government presented a fait accompli. The system ready for deployment with only a minor change in technical leadership. There's more, Diana said quietly. Stephanie has been spreading rumors about your mental health, suggesting you've become paranoid and difficult to work with. She's been telling people you're under tremendous stress and becoming unstable. The strategy was as clear as it was insidious. Undermine my credibility before removing me, ensuring that any objections I raised would be attributed to personal grievances rather than legitimate concerns. The next day brought confirmation. In a tense board meeting, I had prepared a presentation on the security risks of Ryan's modifications, complete with technical documentation and contract citations. Before I could get through my second slide, James interrupted. While we appreciate Abigail's attention to detail, he said, we need to consider the commercial realities. Her approach, while thorough, is causing significant delays and cost overruns. Stephanie nodded in agreement. We've received some concerns from team members about Abigail's intensity lately. Perhaps the pressure of this project is becoming too much. I looked around the table, seeing the narrative solidifying in real time. My legitimate technical concerns were being reframed as evidence of personal instability. Even board members who had previously supported me were now viewing me with hesitation. After the meeting, James cornered me by the elevators. Budget realities require difficult decisions, he said without preamble. Your team is being reduced, effective immediately. You'll maintain oversight, but implementation will transition to Ryan's group. That violates the contract terms, I replied calmly. As principal architect, I'm required to maintain direct control over implementation. James smiled thinly. Our legal team has reviewed the situation. Your role as named architect doesn't guarantee specific internal management authority. As he walked away, I realized they had accelerated their timeline. They weren't waiting until development was complete to edge me out. They were doing it now while I was still needed but increasingly isolated. That night, I implemented the final elements of my contingency plan. The hidden administrative access protocol was now complete, integrated so seamlessly into Guardian's security architecture that even the most thorough code review wouldn't identify it as separate from the core system requirements. I also finalized my documentation of the company's actions, including evidence of their contract violations and Ryan's unauthorized system modifications. Everything was encrypted and securely stored, ready if needed. As I worked through the night, I reflected on how dramatically my situation had changed. 8 years of loyalty and exceptional work had meant nothing when I became inconvenient to their profit margins. The realization was painful but clarifying. They thought they were dealing with a naive technical expert who could be manipulated and discarded. They were about to discover how profoundly they had miscalculated. Friday morning dawned gray and drizzly, matching my mood as I drove to the office. For days, there had been an unusual tension in the air, with hushed conversations stopping when I approached and sympathetic glances from junior colleagues. Diana had texted me cryptically the night before, "Be prepared for anything tomorrow." When I arrived, a calendar invitation appeared on my screen. Mandatory meeting, 10 a.m., executive conference room. No agenda, no attendee list, just a summons. I spent the next hour backing up critical files and ensuring my contingency measures were in place. Whatever was coming, I would not be caught unprepared. At precisely 10 a.m., I entered the conference room to find Marcus, Stephanie, Ryan, and James seated on one side of the table. A woman I didn't recognize sat beside them, her expression professionally blank. On the table in front of an empty chair lay a manila folder. The room was cold, both in temperature and atmosphere. The floor-to-ceiling windows that usually showcased the Virginia skyline were dimmed with electronic tinting, creating a somber courtroom-like environment. "Abigail, please have a seat," Marcus began, his voice carrying the practiced neutrality of a rehearsed speech. "This is Vanessa Turner from Human Resources." I sat down, maintaining eye contact with Marcus, refusing to show the anxiety churning inside me. "Tech Dynamics is implementing a strategic restructuring," he continued, "to better align our technical resources with current and future market demands." I almost laughed at the corporate doublespeak. Stephanie maintained her professional mask, but I could see the satisfaction in her eyes. Ryan couldn't quite hide his smirk as he examined his manicured nails. James simply looked bored, checking
his watch surreptitiously.
"After careful consideration of project requirements and company direction," Marcus droned on, "we've determined that your position is being eliminated, effective immediately." There it was. Despite all the warning signs, despite my preparations, the words still hit like a physical blow. 8 years of my life, countless nights and weekends sacrificed for this company. The revolutionary system I had created, all dismissed in a single bureaucratic sentence. Vanessa slid the folder toward me. "This contains your termination agreement and severance package. We're prepared to offer 8 weeks of pay, provided you sign the included non-disclosure and non-disparagement agreements." 8 weeks for 8 years of service and a $3.4 billion contract? The insult was so blatant, it was almost comical. "You'll also find a comprehensive non-disclosure agreement regarding Guardian and all related technologies," she continued. "Any violation would result in immediate legal action." I opened the folder, scanning the documents while maintaining my composure. The severance agreement was even worse than described. It contained clauses surrendering my intellectual property rights, and an acknowledgement that Ryan Wilson would assume my responsibilities as system architect. "And if I don't sign?" I asked, my voice steadier than I expected. Stephanie leaned forward. "We strongly advise against that path, Abigail." The Severance is generous, considering the performance issues we've documented. Additionally, we'd be forced to inform government contractors about our concerns regarding your recent behavior. The threat was clear: sign away my rights, or they would damage my professional reputation, potentially blacklisting me from future government contracts. We'll need your access badge and company devices before you leave, Ryan added, not bothering to hide his triumph now. Security will escort you to collect your personal belongings. I closed the folder without signing anything. I'll need to review these documents with my attorney. We need an answer today, James insisted. The severance offer expires at close of business. I stood up slowly. Then it expires. I won't be pressured into signing legal documents without proper review. Marcus's expression hardened. That's disappointing, Abigail. We'd hoped to make this transition amicable. Amicable? I repeated. There's nothing amicable about how you've treated me, especially considering my name is the only one on the government contract you're so eager to profit from. A flicker of uncertainty crossed Marcus' face, quickly masked. The contract is with Tech Dynamics, not with you personally. Legal has confirmed our position. I allowed myself a small smile. We'll see about that. As promised, a security guard appeared to escort me to my office. Under his watchful eye, I cleared out my personal items: family photos, my MIT diploma, a few technical books. Colleagues watched uncomfortably from behind cubicle walls, a few brave ones approaching to whisper quick goodbyes or exchange contact information. The most humiliating moment came when Ryan appeared to ensure a smooth transition. He wanted my encryption.
Keys and passwords immediately.
All necessary access information is documented in the system according to protocol, I told him coolly. Anything else would require formal knowledge transfer sessions, which don't appear to be part of today's plan. His face reddened. Don't be difficult, Abigail. You're only hurting yourself. I looked at him directly. Interesting choice of words, Ryan. The security guard escorted me all the way to my car, watching as I placed my box of belongings in the trunk. As I drove away from Tech Dynamics for what they thought was the last time, the rain intensified, matching the tears I could no longer hold back. The drive home was a blur of windshield wipers and painful thoughts. I had expected this, prepared for it. Yet the reality still cut deeply. 8 years of my life dedicated to a company that discarded me the moment they thought they could profit. Without me. The betrayal by people I had trusted and worked alongside for years. The casual cruelty of their execution. My apartment welcomed me with silence, broken only by the greeting from my cat, Oliver. I set down my box of office mementos and collapsed onto the couch, allowing myself the release of genuine emotion now that I was alone. The tears came in waves, carrying anger, betrayal, and a profound sense of loss. For hours, I remained there, processing what had happened. Oliver provided comfort in his feline way, purring against my side as darkness fell outside. Eventually, exhausted by emotion, I slept. Saturday morning arrived with harsh clarity. I woke with swollen eyes, but a clearer mind. Opening my laptop, I reviewed everything I had prepared over the past months. The documentation of Tech Dynamics contract violations, the evidence of Ryan's unauthorized system modifications, the hidden administrative protocols I had implemented. I also reviewed the contract itself, paying special attention to the clauses that named me explicitly as the principal architect. Diana had been right all along. My position was legally protected in ways Tech Dynamics had either overlooked or deliberately misinterpreted. But simply having legal standing wasn't enough. Tech Dynamics had resources I couldn't match in a protracted legal battle. They would delay, obfuscate, and drain my finances until I was forced to settle. I needed leverage. I spent Saturday researching attorneys specializing in government contract law, eventually scheduling a Monday morning appointment with Catherine Reynolds, a partner at a prestigious firm with a reputation for taking on corporate giants. Sunday was devoted to technical preparations. From my home system, I checked the status of Guardian, as expected. Ryan was already attempting to make modifications, unaware that each change he made was being logged by my hidden protocols. I could see his team working frantically to document the system architecture I had created, clearly struggling to understand its complexity. By Sunday evening, my initial devastation had transformed into resolute determination. They had underestimated me from the beginning, my technical capabilities, my foresight, and my willingness to stand up for myself. Most critically, they had failed to understand the power of my position as the named architect on a $3.4 billion government contract. As I prepared for bed, I felt a strange calm. Tomorrow would change everything, not just for me, but for Tech Dynamics. They had fired the one person who truly understood and controlled the system their company was built upon. By Monday evening, they would understand exactly what that meant. I set my alarm for 5 a.m. The confrontation ahead would require perfect timing and unwavering confidence. After 8 years of loyalty rewarded with betrayal, it was time to demonstrate precisely why my name was the only one the government had trusted with their most critical security infrastructure. Monday morning, 5:30 a.m., while Tech Dynamics executives were likely still asleep in their suburban homes, I was already at my computer, implementing the first phase of my counterstrike. The timing was critical. I needed to act before the regular workday began, when system administrators would be monitoring network activity. My first call was to Robert Keller, the government contracting officer who had insisted my name be included on the Guardian contract. His cell phone number was not something Tech Dynamics knew I had, the result of a private conversation after a security briefing months earlier. "Miss Hayes," he answered, groggy. "It's not even 6 a.m. "I apologize for the early call, Mr. Keller, but there's been a serious development regarding the Guardian system that requires immediate attention." His voice sharpened instantly. "What kind of development?" "Tech Dynamics terminated my position on Friday, effective immediately, in direct violation of contract provisions requiring my oversight as principal architect. More concerning, they've begun implementing unauthorized modifications to the security architecture that compromise system integrity." There was a long pause before he responded. "These are serious allegations, Miss Hayes. I'm prepared to document everything, but given the critical nature of the infrastructure Guardian protects, I felt obligated to notify you immediately rather than waiting for normal channels."
"I appreciate that," he said.
"Can you come to my office at 9 a.m.? I'll assemble the relevant personnel." "I'll be there." And Mr. Keller, Tech Dynamics will likely attempt to characterize this as a disgruntled employee situation. "I want to assure you my concerns are purely technical and contractual." "Understood. I'll reserve judgment until I have all the facts." With that first critical communication complete, I moved to the technical phase of my plan. Using my administrator credentials, which Tech Dynamics had deactivated for company systems, but couldn't remove from Guardian itself, I logged into the system's core architecture. I didn't need to sabotage anything. I simply activated the contingency protocol I had built into the system from the beginning. This wasn't a backdoor or vulnerability. It was a security feature designed to protect Guardian from exactly the kind of unauthorized access and modification Ryan was attempting. With a few careful commands, I set Guardian to authenticated maintenance mode, a legitimate status that required my personal verification for any system changes. The protocol was right there in the government-approved documentation, a security measure designed to protect against insider threats. The system wasn't disabled. It continued functioning normally, but any modifications now required proper authentication from the principal architect named in the contract, me. Next, I composed a carefully worded email to Tech Dynamics Board of Directors, copying the General Counsel. The message was professional and precise, outlining the contract violations, the unauthorized system modifications, and my obligation to secure the system pending resolution. I attached documentation of Ryan's unsanctioned changes and the resulting security vulnerabilities, along with relevant contract clauses that explicitly required my oversight. As the legally designated principal architect, I concluded, I have implemented standard security protocols to maintain system integrity until these contract violations are addressed. I remain willing to discuss resolution options that protect both national security interests and my professional standing. I set the email to deliver at 8:30 a.m., ensuring it would land in their inboxes just as they discovered the situation. But before my meeting with government officials by 7 a.m., my phone began buzzing with notifications. First, a text from Diana. All hell breaking loose here. What did you do? Then, increasingly urgent calls from numbers I recognized as Tech Dynamics executives. I let them go to voicemail, maintaining strategic silence as my plan unfolded. At 8:15, I arrived at the office of Catherine Reynolds, the contract attorney I'd contacted. She was a formidable woman in her 50s, with sharp eyes that missed nothing. As I presented my documentation, "They really didn't think this through, did they?" she remarked, reviewing the contract. "Your position is unusually strong. The naming provision creates a direct obligation between you and the government that Tech Dynamics can't simply terminate. What about their claim that my employment agreement supersedes this?" I asked. She shook her head. "Not when a federal contract explicitly names you as the responsible party. They can terminate your employment, but that doesn't extinguish your contractual obligations or authority regarding Guardian." With Catherine's assessment confirming my position, I proceeded to my 9 a.m. meeting at the Department of Homeland Security. Robert Keller had assembled a small but significant group, 2 contract specialists, the technical evaluation lead who had approved Guardian, and a stern-looking woman introduced as DHS legal counsel. For the next 2 hours, I methodically presented my case, showing documentation of the contract provisions naming me as principal architect, Tech Dynamics' systematic efforts to sideline me over the past months, Ryan's unauthorized modifications, and the resulting security vulnerabilities, the company's violation of contractual knowledge transfer provisions, and my implementation of approved security protocols to protect system integrity. To be absolutely clear, I emphasized, Guardian continues to function normally for all authorized operations. I've simply activated standard security protocols to prevent unauthorized modifications until this situation is resolved. The technical lead, Dr. Chin, was particularly concerned about the modifications Ryan had attempted. These changes would bypass essential verification steps in the authentication sequence, he noted. Why would anyone implement this? To increase processing speed, I explained. The system would appear more responsive in demonstrations, but at significant security cost. By 11:30, my phone had accumulated 27 missed calls and 16 increasingly desperate text messages from Tech Dynamics. The most recent from Marcus himself simply read, "Whatever you want, name your price." The DHS team adjourned to confer privately. When they returned, Robert Keller's expression was resolute. "We're initiating a formal contract review based on these findings," he announced. "In the meantime, Ms. Hayes is to maintain her role as principal architect, as specified in the contract, regardless of her employment status with Tech Dynamics. We'll be contacting them directly to clarify this position." As I left the government offices with Catherine, I felt the first real sense of vindication. My position had been recognized, my concerns taken seriously. But this was just the beginning. By early afternoon, Tech Dynamics was in full crisis mode. Through Diana, who was texting me updates, I learned that an emergency board meeting had been called. Government officials had contacted Marcus directly, expressing serious concerns about contract compliance. The stock price had already dropped 7% as rumors circulated about problems with their flagship contract. At 3 p.m., I finally answered a call from Marcus. "This has gone far enough, Abigail," he began, his voice strained. "You've made your point." "Have I? Because on Friday you seemed quite confident in your position. Let's not be petty. We both want what's best for the project." "I agree completely. What's best is full compliance with the contract that names me as principal architect." He sighed heavily. "What do you want?" "I want a meeting tomorrow, 10 a.m. at Catherine Reynolds' office. My attorney will send the address. I'll present my terms. Then we can meet at our offices. I'm sure we can." "No, neutral ground, with legal representation. Those are my conditions." After a moment's hesitation, he agreed. That evening, as reports of Tech Dynamics stock decline dominated industry, News, I prepared for the negotiation ahead. Catherine helped me outline reasonable but firm demands, focusing on contract compliance rather than personal grievance. Don't let emotion drive this, she advised. You have leverage now. Use it strategically. I slept better that night than I had in months, knowing that after tomorrow, either Tech Dynamics would accept my terms, or they would face the consequences of their actions in ways that would reverberate through their company for years to come. The choice was theirs. But for the first time since this ordeal began, the power was mine. Tuesday morning brought the first clear sunshine in days, a fitting backdrop to my newfound confidence as I dressed for the meeting with Tech Dynamics. I chose a steel blue suit that projected professionalism and authority. No longer the eager team player, but a formidable adversary who knew precisely what she was worth. Catherine's law offices occupied the top floor of a sleek building in downtown D.C., offering panoramic views of the Capitol. I arrived early to review our strategy one final time. Remember, Catherine advised, they're in damage control mode.
No.
The government inquiry has them scared, and their technical teams are undoubtedly reporting that they can't modify Guardian without your authentication. That's significant leverage, but don't overplay it. At precisely 10 a.m., the Tech Dynamics contingent arrived: Marcus, Stephanie, Ryan, James, and their general counsel, a silver-haired man named Lawrence Blackwell, whom I recognized from company events. Their collective demeanor had transformed dramatically since Friday's termination meeting. Gone was the smugness, replaced by thinly veiled anxiety and, in Ryan's case, barely suppressed anger. Catherine's conference room, with its imposing mahogany table and floor-to-ceiling windows, provided an appropriately dramatic setting. As we took our places, I maintained deliberate eye contact with each executive, noting how Stephanie now avoided my gaze while Marcus attempted a conciliatory smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Thank you for agreeing to meet," Marcus began, his typical commanding tone notably subdued. "I think we all want to resolve this situation quickly and discreetly." "Let's be clear about what this situation is, Mr. Bennett," Catherine responded before I could. "Your company wrongfully terminated the principal architect named in a $3.4 billion government contract, then attempted unauthorized modifications to a critical security system, triggering legitimate protective protocols and a federal investigation. We're here because you created a crisis, not Miss Hayes." Lawrence Blackwell leaned forward. "We have a different interpretation of the contract provisions, but we're willing to discuss remedies without attributing blame. The government doesn't share your interpretation," I noted calmly. "As you're aware, they've affirmed my status as principal architect, regardless of my employment status with Tech Dynamics." Marcus cut to the chase. "What do you want, Abigail? Reinstatement? A settlement package? Name your terms." I opened a folder containing the document Catherine and I had prepared. "I have two alternative proposals. Tech Dynamics can choose which better suits their interests." The room tensed as I handed copies to each person. Option 1. I returned to Tech Dynamics as Executive Vice President of Security Architecture, reporting directly to the CEO, with full autonomy over Guardian and related systems, a compensation package commensurate with that position, and a seat on the executive committee. Ryan made a choked sound of protest, which Marcus silenced with a sharp glance. Option 2, I continued. Tech Dynamics facilitates the transfer of the Guardian contract to my new security firm, Hayes Infrastructural Defense Systems, which will fulfill all contractual obligations. Tech Dynamics will retain a licensing fee, but primary control and revenue will shift to my company. "This is extortion," Stephanie hissed. Catherine's response was immediate and cutting. "No, Miss Carter, this is negotiation from a position of strength. Extortion would be threatening to do something illegal. Miss Hayes is simply offering solutions to a problem your company created." James, ever the numbers man, was already calculating. The contract transfer would significantly impact quarterly projections. Shareholders would revolt. "Consider the alternative," I replied. "A prolonged government investigation, system access issues, and the public revelation that Tech Dynamics attempted to cut corners on national security infrastructure. What would that do to shareholder value?" Lawrence whispered something to Marcus, who nodded grimly. "We need to confer privately," Marcus announced. Catherine directed them to an adjacent conference room. When they left, she gave me an approving nod. "Well played." They're rattled. While we waited, my phone buzzed with a text from Diana. "Emergency, all hands cancelled. Rumors flying about executive changes. What's happening?" I replied simply, "Negotiating, we'll update you soon." After 20 minutes, the Tech Dynamics team returned. Marcus looked resigned, Stephanie coldly furious, Ryan pale with suppressed rage, and James grimly pragmatic. "We're prepared to accept option 1, with modifications," Marcus stated. "Executive Vice President title, direct report to me, seat on the Executive Committee, and compensation package as specified. However, we propose a 2-year review period." For the autonomy provision, I shook my head. Full autonomy is non-negotiable given recent events. However, I'm willing to establish clear reporting protocols for major decisions. Another 15 minutes of negotiation followed, hammering out details on compensation, authority boundaries, and transition logistics. Throughout, I maintained calm professionalism, while inwardly marveling at the dramatic power shift. The people who had escorted me out in humiliation 3 days ago were now negotiating for my return on my terms. By noon, we had a preliminary agreement. Catherine would draft the formal documents for review, and I would begin the process of removing Guardian's special authentication requirements once the agreement was signed. As the meeting concluded, Marcus attempted a reconciliatory gesture. "I hope we can put this unfortunate situation behind us and move forward productively, Abigail." I met his gaze directly. "My professional commitment to Guardian and its mission remains absolute, Marcus. That hasn't changed. Everything else will depend on actions, not words." Outside Catherine's office, Ryan attempted to intercept me, his face twisted with barely contained fury. "You won't get away with this. You think you've won, but—" "Mr. Wilson," Catherine interrupted sharply, "I strongly advise against making statements that could be construed as threats against my client. Such behavior would violate the terms we just negotiated." He retreated, but the hatred in his eyes told me this conflict was far from over. Back at my apartment, I finally had time to process the whirlwind of events. In just 4 days, I had gone from terminated employee to executive vice president with unprecedented autonomy. But the victory, while satisfying, came with sobering realizations about corporate loyalty and power dynamics. My phone rang. It was Robert Keller from Homeland Security. "Miss Hayes, I've been informed you've reached an agreement with Tech Dynamics." "Yes, I'll be returning as executive vice president, with full oversight of Guardian, as stipulated in the contract." "Good. The system's integrity is our primary concern." He paused. "I should inform you that our preliminary review has uncovered some irregularities in Tech Dynamics' financial handling of the contract. There may be a separate investigation." After we disconnected, Diana called, her voice bubbling with excitement. "The office is absolute chaos. Marcus called an emergency executive meeting. And afterwards, Stephanie was seen clearing out her office. Security escorted her out. Ryan's been reassigned to some obscure commercial project, and James is apparently cooperating with a financial review." "What did you do?" "I hadn't anticipated such immediate consequences, Diana. I simply stood my ground. The rest they brought on themselves. Well, your new office is being prepared. It's the corner suite on the executive floor." "When are you coming?" "Back? Thursday. I need tomorrow to prepare. And they need time to communicate the changes properly." By Wednesday afternoon, the transformation at Tech Dynamics was making industry news. The company had issued a press release announcing organizational changes to better align with our commitment to security excellence, including my appointment as executive vice president. The statement carefully avoided mentioning the departed executives or any contract disputes. Tech Dynamics stock, which had dropped nearly 15% during the crisis, stabilized on the news of the restructuring. Industry analysts speculated about the behind-the-scenes drama, but praised the company's apparent recommitment to security leadership. I spent Wednesday preparing for my return, reviewing Guardian's status and planning priority actions. The system logs showed that, after failing to bypass my security protocols, Ryan's team had abandoned their modification attempts. The architecture remained intact, though I identified several areas needing immediate attention after their tampering. Thursday morning arrived with a strange mixture of vindication and apprehension. Returning to Tech Dynamics would be a triumph, but also a challenge. I would be working with people who had witnessed my humiliation and subsequent rise, including some who had been complicit in my termination. As I walked through the lobby, badge clipped to my jacket, employees stopped to stare or whisper. Some offered congratulations or welcome back smiles. Others, particularly those who had allied with Stephanie or Ryan, regarded me warily. Marcus met me at the elevator to the executive floor, a symbolic gesture of my new status. "Your office is ready," he said, guiding me to the corner suite that had once been Stephanie's. "I've scheduled an executive committee meeting at 11 o'clock to formally introduce you to the team." The office was spacious and bright, with floor-to-ceiling windows offering panoramic views. My personal items, hastily packed just days ago, had been carefully arranged on the desk. A new nameplate read, Abigail Hayes, Executive Vice President, Security Architecture. Diana appeared in my doorway, grinning widely. "I never doubted you," she said, entering to give me a quick hug. Though I admit I didn't expect such a dramatic resolution. "Neither did I confessed. How bad is the fallout?" "Stephanie's already trying to spin her departure as a planned career move. Ryan's been relegated to commercial applications and is reportedly furious. James is cooperating with auditors reviewing contract allocations. Apparently, there was significant misappropriation of Guardian funds to other projects. A serious violation of federal contracting rules. And the general atmosphere? Mixed. Shock, certainly. Respect, definitely, even from those who wouldn't admit it, and no small amount of fear about what other changes might come." She smiled. "Your team is ecstatic, though. They've been champagne shopping for your official return." The executive committee meeting proved surprisingly cordial, with Marcus introducing me as the technical visionary behind our most significant government partnership. New faces had replaced Stephanie and James, looking both curious and cautious about the company's dramatic restructuring. By afternoon, I had begun the process of re-establishing proper security protocols for Guardian, starting with a comprehensive review of all changes attempted during my absence. I also scheduled meetings with my restored development team, many of whom had been sidelined under the previous regime. As the day ended, I stood at my office window, watching the sunset paint the Virginia skyline in shades of gold and crimson. The view was different from up here, broader, clearer, with perspective impossible from my previous position. My phone buzzed with a text from Robert Keller. "Contract review complete. Your status as principal architect formally reaffirmed. Broader financial investigation continuing." Another notification followed, a news alert about Tech Dynamics. The board had announced a comprehensive governance review following internal leadership changes. Without being named directly, the shadow of my confrontation was reshaping the entire company. I had won more completely than I'd anticipated, not just reclaiming my position, but catalyzing the removal of those who had betrayed me and the exposure of broader corporate misconduct. The system I had built was secure again, under proper oversight. Yet as I gathered my things to leave my new executive office, I felt not triumph, but a somber responsibility. The power I now wielded came with obligations, to the security of the infrastructure Guardian protected, to the team that had remained loyal, and to establishing a more ethical culture than the one that had nearly destroyed both me and my creation. The game had changed, and so had I. Tech Dynamics would never again mistake technical expertise for exploitable naivety or confuse dedication with vulnerability. They had learned at significant cost exactly why my name alone had been trusted with a $3.4 billion system. And what happened when they forgot that? 6 months into my new role as Executive Vice President, Tech Dynamics had transformed almost beyond recognition. My corner office now featured multiple awards for Guardian's successful implementation across critical infrastructure systems nationwide. More importantly, it had become a gathering place for innovative thinking and ethical leadership. The morning began with my executive team meeting. A diverse group of technical experts I had personally selected for both their skills and integrity. Gone was the hostile, competitive atmosphere that had characterized the previous regime. In its place was collaborative problem-solving and transparent communication. The Department of Energy implementation is exceeding performance metrics by 23%, reported Jessica, my head of infrastructure integration, who had been restored to her rightful position. They're requesting expanded capabilities for their power grid monitoring systems. Excellent, I nodded. Tyler, how's the security team handling the expansion? Tyler, now my director of threat analysis, smiled. We've completed 3 rounds of penetration testing with 0 exploitable vulnerabilities. The adaptive response protocols are functioning exactly as designed. As the team filed out after our strategy session, Diana lingered behind. Now, General Counsel, following the legal department's restructuring, she had been instrumental in rebuilding Tech Dynamics' ethical framework. The final settlements were approved yesterday, she informed me. Stephanie and Ryan have signed comprehensive non-disclosure agreements in exchange for the negotiated severance packages. And James is cooperating fully with the financial investigation. His testimony about the misallocation of contract funds has been illuminating. I nodded, unsurprised. The government's investigation had uncovered systematic financial improprieties, with millions of dollars from the Guardian contract diverted to other company projects, a serious violation of federal contracting rules.
Any word on Marcus?
I asked, referencing our CEO who had taken an extended leave of absence as the investigations intensified. The board is meeting tomorrow. Rumor has it they're going to announce his permanent replacement next week. She gave me a meaningful look. Your name is being mentioned prominently. I sighed, not entirely comfortable with the possibility. I'm a technical leader, Diana, not a corporate politician, which is exactly why you should consider it.
This
Company needs leadership that understands both the technical and ethical dimensions of what we do. After she left, I walked to the window, contemplating how dramatically my professional life had changed. 6 months ago, I had been escorted from this building in humiliation. Today, I was being considered for its highest position. My private reflection was interrupted by a notification. Robert Keller from Homeland Security was in the lobby for our scheduled meeting. I had maintained regular contact with him throughout Guardian's final implementation phases, building a relationship of mutual respect and transparency. Impressive progress, he commented, after I guided him through our latest security enhancements. The system has exceeded our original specifications in every category. We've assembled the right team, I replied. People who understand that when you're protecting critical infrastructure, excellence isn't optional. He nodded thoughtfully. That's actually related to why I'm here, Abigail. The success of Guardian has attracted attention at the highest levels. The administration is forming a critical infrastructure security advisory council, and they've asked me to sound you out about joining. The offer was unexpected and flattering recognition not just of Guardian's technical excellence, but of the principles I had fought to uphold. Later that afternoon, I made time for something I considered essential to my new leadership approach: mentoring sessions with junior team members. Today I was meeting with Megan, a promising young developer, who reminded me of myself 8 years ago. The thing is, she confessed, I'm worried about speaking up when I see potential security issues. The senior developers get defensive. I smiled, recognizing the familiar dilemma. Technical correctness matters more than hierarchical harmony. Megan, document your concerns thoroughly. Present them professionally, and stand your ground when the evidence supports you. Even if it makes people uncomfortable. Especially then, the most important security vulnerabilities are often the ones people don't want to acknowledge. As the day wound down, Marcus unexpectedly appeared in my doorway, his first visit to the office in months. Time had not been kind to him. Stress had etched new lines around his eyes, and his confident posture had diminished. Do you have a minute, Abigail? He asked, his voice lacking its former authority. I gestured to a chair. Of course. He sat heavily, looking around at the office that had once belonged to his closest ally. The board has asked for my resignation. It will be announced tomorrow. I said nothing, waiting for him to continue. I wanted to say, Well, I suppose an apology is inadequate at this point. Probably, I agreed, but it's a start. He met my eyes directly for the first time. I miscalculated badly. I saw you as a technical asset rather than a person, and certainly not as the linchpin of our most important contract. That was a failure of both character and business judgment. Why did you do it, Marcus? We had built something remarkable. Here, the company was thriving. Guardian was revolutionary. Why risk it all to cut corners? He sighed deeply. Pressure. Growth targets, competition, the usual excuses. Stephanie convinced me we could maintain the government relationship without the expense of your team. Ryan promised he could replicate your architecture with cheaper resources. A rueful laugh escaped him. Obviously, they were wrong. Obviously, I echoed, thinking of the chaos they had nearly created in critical infrastructure systems nationwide. The board wants you to consider the CEO position, he continued. For what it's worth, I've endorsed the idea. You understand this company's capabilities and responsibilities better than anyone. After he left, I remained at my desk, watching the evening shadows lengthen across the Virginia landscape. The journey from terminated employee to potential CEO in 6 months was almost too surreal to comprehend. My phone buzzed with a text from Jessica. Team celebrating at Riverside Grill, you coming? I smiled, gathering my things. The technical challenges of Guardian had been complex, but ultimately solvable through logic and expertise. The human challenges rebuilding trust, establishing ethical leadership, balancing power with responsibility were infinitely more nuanced. At the restaurant, surrounded by the team that had remained loyal through the turmoil, I found myself reflecting on the lessons of the past 6 months. When Jessica raised a toast to the only name on the contract, friendly laughter rippled through the group. Speech! Speech! Tyler and others joined in. I stood, glass in hand, looking at the faces of people who had stood by me when it mattered. I want to thank all of you, not just for your technical brilliance, which is considerable, but for your integrity. What we build protects vital systems that millions of people depend on daily. That responsibility demands our best work and our highest ethical standards. Nods of agreement circled the table. I learned something important through this experience, I continued. Technical excellence matters enormously, but so does knowing your value and having the courage to stand up for yourself when necessary. None of us are replaceable parts in a corporate machine. We're individuals with unique skills and contributions that deserve recognition and respect. After dinner, walking alone to my car under a canopy of stars, I felt a profound sense of peace. The anger and betrayal that had driven me during those dark days after my termination had transformed into something more constructive, a commitment to building not just secure systems, but a security environment for the people who created them. Whatever came next, whether the CEO position or continuing in my current role, I would carry forward the most important lesson from this extraordinary journey. Systems, whether technological or human, function best when built on a foundation of integrity, transparency, and mutual respect. When those elements are compromised, the entire structure becomes vulnerable. My phone buzzed with an email from Robert Keller, confirming the advisory council invitation. Another notification showed a financial news alert. Tech Dynamics CEO expected to step down. Security expert Abigail Hayes rumored a successor. I smiled, pocketing the phone as I reached my car. The corporate world had underestimated me, assuming that technical expertise couldn't translate to leadership power. They had forgotten that in today's interconnected world, those who build and understand the systems hold the true advantage, especially when they're the only name on a $3.4 billion contract. Have you ever had to stand up for yourself in a professional situation when others undervalued your contributions? How did you handle it? Share your experiences in the comments below. And don't forget to like and subscribe for more stories about navigating workplace challenges and turning setbacks into opportunities. Thanks for watching. And remember, know your worth and never let anyone convince you otherwise.